If it's not yet clear to you, we are at war. And it's a war that is raging in nearly every country and people group, but not on the streets with guns and knives. Instead, it's a war in the landscape of ideas. And now, let me introduce to you one of the most impactful soldiers on this war front, Mr. Joe Rogan, a UFC announcer, comedian, and podcaster. And if you're into podcasts, you've more than likely stumbled upon his show, what's called the Joe Rogan Experience.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
But even if you're not into podcasts, if you have a cell phone and social media, you're more than likely to have come across snippets from his show. And the reason why is because the dude talks to everyone, from comedians to athletes to scientists and to even artists. And so whatever your interest is, it's more than likely to have overlapped with at least one of his conversations. And given the popularity of his show, this is why he shows up on your feed.
It's entirely possible.
But now let me get into the point of this video, which is to show you that one of Joe's core principles that guides his decision for who to have on his show is just downright trash. And to put it clearly, I'm talking about the idea that we as a country should have a free market of ideas. And I know, our founding fathers must be rolling in their graves at that. And another one in particular, a Supreme Court Justice, Oliver Wendell Holmes. It was a little over a century ago, in 1919, when he birthed this idea that would, since then, literally dominate our way of thinking about freedom of speech. You see, Holmes had this vision that the ultimate good desired is better reached by free trade in ideas, that the best test of truth is the power of the thought to get itself accepted in the competition of the market. And so it began. Welcome to the marketplace of ideas, and by extension, what will eventually become the Joe Rogan Experience. This idea eventually caught on fire, meaning that this went everywhere. And the reason why is because one of the biggest selling points of this market was that it would be a space where truth itself naturally emerges. And where it's emerging would be analogous to that of a product, a thing that earns market share in the market from free trade and competition. Can I get some water, please? Now, here's the big question. Does this really work? I mean, can the best truths really rise to the surface the same way that an iPhone did in a free market economy?
Hell no, dude. Who's asking that? Hey, it's a stupid question though, right?
I mean, he's not wrong. In our era of cable news, streaming channels, social media, and the internet, this concept of a free market of ideas is seriously flawed. I mean, just think about it. We don't expect the market to churn out truths the same way it does, say, a rubber ducky or a Tascam lav mic. Or better yet, think of how a car has evolved in this linear fashion over time versus the contradictory headlines regarding COVID. Again, the free market does not treat these two things equally. And hell, the free market hardly does what it's supposed to do with just products and services, which is why we have what's called market failures. Take monopolies, for example. They spoil the market because they lose the proper discipline enforced by competition. So they're less incentivized to create a product that results in both a higher quality and a lower price. Or, to put it more simply, monopolies push prices up, but quality down. And speaking of quality products, I feel like this is a good time to introduce you to the sponsor of this video, Manta Sleep. So the Manta Sleep Mask is basically a hug for your eyes. And what makes it so is this little feature right here. That is called 100% blackout, my friends. What is also worth noting is the adjustable straps and eye sockets that make this mask fit snug on any face, even his beautiful face. And just when you think that sleep couldn't get better with this, you then find out that it comes with Bluetooth headphones. So picture this. You're lying in bed, ready to drift off into dreamland, but instead of counting sheep, you're listening to your favorite tunes, an insightful podcast, or the sweet sounds of nature. And it's all thanks to the Bluetooth headphones that are built into the sleep mask. Also, check out the adjustability feature to get the speakers right where you want them. So if that sounds interesting to you, check out the link in the description below to find the best sleep mask that suits your specific needs. And as a bonus, use code TP10 at checkout for 10% off any of the masks that can be found on mantasleep.com. Now, back to what I was saying. Aside from market failures, here's another point that gets more to the heart of why a free market of ideas doesn't work. It was in 2018 when researchers studied tweets that were liked and retweeted by users. They found that false stories spread significantly farther, faster, deeper, and more broadly than the truth in all categories of information. The most viral falsehoods reached between 1,000 and 100,000 users, while the most popular true stories hardly reached more than 1,000 users. In light of this, I think Mark Twain said it best. A lie can travel halfway across the world while truth is putting on its shoes. So, why then does fiction beat fact? Well, if a free market hardly works with products and services, we can't expect it to do that much better when applied to truth. And that is simply because humans aren't wired for truth.
You can't handle the truth!
Meaning that the machine that functions as the sole interpreter of truth, the human brain, is a mix of biology, culture, and personal history. And so as a result, we are highly subjective when it comes to identifying truth. And not only are we subjective, but we're highly selective when it comes to truth, meaning that we are extremely good at only finding information that already confirms what we believe is true. So to put it bluntly, truth isn't always a priority for us, perhaps not even a priority at all. Which brings me back to the main point of this video. The marketplace of ideas is not an ideal way to bring about truth because when it comes to making money off of information, it's not about what's true, it's about what's interesting. Major media outlets understand this. They prioritize engagement over truth because it's about market share. It's simply business.
By the way, our ratings are great.
But truth? That shouldn't be subject to a popularity contest. In getting back to Joe Rogan now, I think he does understand this, which is why he invites guests on his show with opposing viewpoints. So let me be clear, I do believe he's genuine in his truth seeking. But being genuine and open-minded isn't enough to counterbalance the spewing of bullshit that comes from some of his guests.
Senate voted to kill babies!
I started this gang called the Proud Boys.
And I'm talking misinformation and disinformation, what is used to weaponize free speech and democracy. I mean, just think about it. Imagine you're Joe Rogan and you give your podcast mic to a guest. Whatever comes out of their mouth is going into millions of people's ears. Millions! And so knowing about the human brain and its indifference to truth, we can't just assume that truth will magically find its way to the surface through the wake of misinformation and disinformation. Because again, ideas are not like products. It doesn't work in a free market. And to assume it does is to really commit this kind of fallacy, which I don't think officially has a name, so let's just call it the Joe Rogan fallacy. But of course, I don't think that just by avoiding the JR fallacy, that's going to be enough to promote truth. Especially when you think about the exponential spread of information all over the internet. So, in light of all of that, how about we consider this? Instead of a marketplace of ideas, what if we had a courtroom of ideas? A space bound by strict democratic principles, while also not allowing for an oversaturation of one single story, a real dialectic. And not solely for profit, but for truth. Just imagine major news outlets and social media being governed like this, in a courtroom-like fashion with checks and balances. Just that alone could change the way that we approach truth, which fundamentally involves not seeing truth as an absolute fixed unit of information, but as something in process, something under an evolution. And with that kind of nonpartisan indifference towards truth reflected in our system, I think we'll be able to better identify real collisions between truth and error. And obviously, the better we're able to do that, the better we'll be able to manage a more holistic view of the world. So maybe it's time to rethink old metaphors. Is a free market model really the best framework for our ideas? Or do we need a new one for the 21st century? That's a genuine question. You let me know. But until then, I rest my case.